Hello everyone, my name is Margaret McLAUGHLIN and I will be doing the third lesson in our Group 2 project, and the title of my lesson is What is Your Favorite Math Game? And it's for grade 3 and it's in the Data Management and Probability strand. So as you know, the context is that our school has been given funding to design a brand new game room. Our principal and school council is asking for student input into choosing the activities and our games for our new game room. Our grade 3 class will design school-wide surveys to collect information from students to find out the favorite activity and game choices for our new game room. So the learning goal basically is students will create the school-wide survey to answer the question, what is your favorite math game or activity in the new game room in our school? The students will communicate their data by representing in a graph and sharing this with the class in the school. So the big ideas are a collection and organization of data and data relationships. And Van der Waal talks about this is actually quite difficult for young students. So it's something that's really important to give them rich opportunities for them to develop it, take ownership of it, and try to make sense of what it means to collect data and what do we do with it. And so you can see over here, in the curriculum expectations, they've got this collecting and organizing, then reading and describing it. Over here it's doing a simple survey, very different grade 3. When I started this, I was looking through a grade 6 lens, because that's where I've been talking and teaching for the last 2 years. And so again, they have to organize it and draw conclusions, and this is the tough part. So some of the background ideas for data management, I was looking at Van der Waal and the Effective Guide for Kindergarten Grade 3. And they talk about how important statistical literacy is to help them understand the world around them and to really analyze and make sense of the information that we're being bombarded in through the media. It's also related to algebra. Of course, I didn't realize this right away, but because we're analyzing the description of relationships, and that's what algebra is. And it's important to give students, I mentioned this, the real world opportunities. And there's 4 basic processes they both talk about. Formulating questions. Now we're sort of going to be guiding them because the principals asked for this specific data and it's for a game room, but nevertheless they'll have an opportunity to make choices. So they're going to have to figure out how they're going to collect data, and they're going to have to figure out how to analyze it, and they're going to interpret it. So their learning goal for the teacher is that students will be able to create this simple survey and do 1 or 2 classes in the school. It really depends on how large your school is. They'll be able to determine their game choices anywhere from 4 to 10. They'll have to choose. Students will have to be able to collect their data with their partner. It might be in groups of 2 to 3. It really depends on how many students are in the school. Students will be able to create a bar graph or a pictograph, and they'll be able to give and explain 2 conclusions from their graphs. Students will use appropriate graphing skills. Now we are expecting them to know some because our Group 2 project is following EQAO, so they should have these basic skills. The students will be able to present their data and bar graphs to the school. So for the student learning girls, it's pretty much student friendly. Hopefully I won't trip over my language anymore. So what are your favorite math games or activities for the new game room? To collect the data and to graph it, make conclusions, present it. So I'll be successful when I design a simple survey, including choices. I survey 1 or 2 classes. I collect and record, graph the results, include all those various good things for graphs, title, grade that they surveyed, appropriate scale, labels, and all that good stuff. Describe 2 things. That's really important, and this is a tough thing for young students. And this is where you'll notice the difference in the level 4 and the level 3 and the level 2, and then share their information. So I mentioned about their previous experience. For the student needs, I am really sort of a novice, I would say, on the graph for UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning. But I think it's really important because it really targets those range of learners. Instead of in differentiated instruction, you have those different goals that you're looking at towards each of the various needs. But in universal design, you're trying to meet all of them through this universal perspective. The equivalent is the buffet they mentioned as opposed to separate meals. So an example is the multiple means of engagement, where you have student voice, choice, you have a rich task like the one we have, success criteria. The second one is representation, where you have visual, audio, that's your multimedia. And then your action and expression, so multiple ways for students to be able to demonstrate their learning. So we'll go through quickly the ADHD and the various learners that we have. I know my other two colleagues would have done this already, but we'll just go through it quickly. So ADHD students, depending whether they're attentive or inattentive, you want to help them develop confidence. So have math partners, hands-on activities, preferential seating, think, pair, share, minimize distraction, provide them an alternate area, breakout spaces. They really love that. Sound reducing headphones, repeat instructions, and check in with them. Have a lot of students with weak fine motor skills still in grade 3. So give them a peer buddy, have scribing available to write the results, or an iPad, audio recordings, Voice Pro, all of those good things. Learning disabilities, there's a wide range here, so it's really important to be attentive to those students in addition to have that UDL perspective. So give them some review. Oh, there's a little mistake here. Voice. Provide visuals. Use technology a lot. Google Read and Write is a good one. You could scan some of these things. Group seating, lots of breaks. Sign language. This is my sign language. Oh, here we go. Can't do too fast on this. That's my signal for going to the washroom at our school and in my class. And so I would use that. Lots of manipulatives, making sure that those expectations in your class, they're visual, they should all know this by now. Peer tutors, think, pair, share, math word walls, all of these are things that you know. Hearing impaired, big one is the hush-ups, FM system, preferential, and really facing them one-on-one. That's really important. Make sure, because they become very proficient at lip reading. Autism, again, wide spectrum of autism, and those visual schedules are crucial. Everything visual as much as you can get. Lots of cues for them. First, then squishy, fidget, squishy toys, social stories, even for this class survey, peer buddies, lots of time between transition, really important, and lots of praise for these students. Behavior. Well, we all have that, don't we? Lots of behavior in our classes. So having a behavior plan is good, if there is one. A lot of safe spaces. Try to anticipating that behavior, what those antecedents are. Lots of choice, voice. Again, you see the UDL in here. Lots of breaks, incentives. I really try to develop leadership, and I think that's really important. Zones of regulation. So, getting down to, we're now 7 minutes in, heaven help me. Materials and preparation, basic writing, recording skills. I do have graphing templates for the students if they want to use them for collecting data, bar graph, pictograph. Again, it's grade 3, and I find that they really sometimes need that structure, but it's open-ended. They want to do their own on graph paper, that's okay. They love clipboards, I put those in there. Lots of actual math games so they could see that. The smartboard projector, anything that can project it, that's that multimedia on UDL. Display your math vocabulary, that should be in there. There should be anchor charts for bar graphs and pictographs. So the anticipated student responses, common misperceptions, and guiding questions probe student thinking, that will be within the lesson as we go through. One of the things, again, the research is telling us that the amount of questioning and modeling scaffolding you're going to do with these students is going to depend with where they're at when you're working with them, because you really want them to have that opportunity to get messy, as we say, in those authentic tasks, really try to figure it out for themselves. So the before portion of the lesson is actually a little bit longer than some lessons that I would have, and it's basically because I really want them to have a chance to sort of remember their skills, make those good connections, and have a chance to look at one another's work, sort of get into it and be well prepared before they go and do the actual survey in the school. So they're going to arrive and see lots of those math board games, activities around the room. That's your hook. Then you display this paragraph. Again, we've talked about the contest. And then the question they start off with is, what do you think would be the favorite choices of math games or activities for the new school game room? And this is to front load it, to have that discussion initially. So they'll think, pair, share with their thinking partners. And they'll share their ideas, and they'll come up with a lot of solutions for different games. You can see them there. And there's probably a lot more. That's just what came to me. So some of those questions initially would be, what activities do you think the different grade levels in the school might enjoy? And some of the students, I can even hear them, and they would say something like, my sister in kindergarten loves bebots. And someone would say, I don't know what older students like. They're always playing sports or they're on their phone. Maybe we need to ask students at recess for more ideas. I know. I could look for games on the iPad to see which games kids like. Most of us know the kids would just take off and do it, not necessarily say it. So you'd keep prompting them, how many game or activity choices should you include in your survey? And the students might say, well, there's lots of kids in the school, maybe 10. I don't know. Well, maybe the principal might be getting more games, so maybe we should just ask for a 5 for the younger ones and 6 or 10 for the older ones. Love the fact that the older ones are getting more games. So then, once you've had this general discussion, you ask students to work with their math partners, and usually I assign math partners and we rotate them in groups of 2 to create and design their survey question. So basically, even though we framed that question for the school, they still can choose some of the activities that they want to ask the students. So tell them after they finish creating them that when everyone's finished, they can survey everyone in the class using clipboards. And so if there's students who are finished before them, they can be doing their self-assessments or the group assessments. So students will then use the survey questions and ask their classmate. So some of the responses you can see, some of them will have lots of activities. They may just be focusing on what they like and not reflecting the rest of school. They may forget to have at least so many choices. One of the things that they may forget is that they want to do everybody in the school, and logistically that's going to be difficult, and so I'm sort of framing them and giving them some structure. They may record information they're collecting incorrectly. So guiding questions, as you're working with the students, as they're doing the gallery walk, as they're doing peer conferencing, these are some of the questions that you can ask them, and I've mentioned some already. I'm talking about how you can organize it, what do you think will be most popular, some predictions, how will you go about doing this survey in this school, do you think that we should have educational activities or could be fun ones like banana games, bananagrams, is there any research you might want to do, and how will you record your responses? So when the students have surveyed their classmates, we're still in the before, it's they're still making connections with what they've done before and building the framework within the class. They collect their data. Now I want them to create a bar graph or a pictograph. So they'll describe and at least 2 things about what they see on their graph from surveying the students in the class. So you can see it's going to be noisy, it's going to be messy, they're going to be at different points, but it would be a lot of fun. And again, students finish early. Oh, I'm ahead of myself. So this is when they do their self or group assessments. So when they've all completed, they'll display them in a gallery walk. It doesn't have to be a fancy one. And then they're going to go in their math partners to them, and they're going to review them and make some comments. And their comments, again, should be focused on the math, what they're seeing in the graphs, what they're liking about their choices, what they're seeing in terms of the favorite activities in our class. So some will comment, and here it is. Some will be the color, too many bars, that type of thing. Misconceptions. They often have trouble choosing appropriate scale. They forget to include the starting point of 0. They forget labeling it. They have trouble deciding what activities are the favorite choices, and they only graph a few instead of all of them. And so your guiding questions are, does it matter which graph we use? Does a larger number of students affect how the graphs look? Can you describe 1 or 2 things about what the graph is telling you? And that's really the key piece of making those relationships and interpreting. Getting all excited about the questions and how they're graphing about what are you seeing when you're doing that. So in other words, that relationship between the data and what it's saying, that's the critical peaks that we want our students to start developing. Are there any similarities, differences? What's the most popular? What's the least? Compare them, 3 more, 2 less, that type of thing. So I have a bunch of solutions, but I just want to go through these couple ones very quickly before we get to the consolidation. between the level 4 and the level 3 response, what you're really seeing, I keep wanting to point with my finger instead of using the cursor, is this part here, the description. So this student here is tallied correctly, wonderful graph, no mistakes, but it's here that the level 4 is saying that the graph shows 3 more people prefer Battleship than Trouble. And then another thing they're saying, the graph is telling me that Dash and Dot and that are the favorites. And you'll notice there's quite a difference in the grade 3. They say that Kerplunk is the most favorite and the other ones is the least favorite, and then you can figure out how many students are in the graph. These parts here are pretty much the same. You'll find the consolidation that in level 3 in EQAO there may be just one error in terms of graphing some of the tallies over here, but basically the difference is in the analysis of the graph. And here you see a level 2. They've done not so bad here, but you see in the relationship, most people like Battleship, no one likes such and such. They're not really making good relationship comparing who has more and less and how much, and looking at those numerical values. I keep pointing. I apologize for that. I'm not used to doing this. All right, so then we talk about which ones that we're going to do. So we want to move them into, it's going to be really messy if we all go out there. There's logistic issues about doing it, right? But we want them to find it out. So we're talking about, could we just use different survey questions? Why or why not? If we create surveys for each division, will our data be sufficient? How will we decide in the game choices for each division? How will we collect the data in the school? So there's going to be approximately 10 groups of 2 to 3 to survey one class of the school, depending on the size and how many classes you have. So you're going to assist students in their math groups to choose which division they want to survey. Because I really thought about this initially, and I thought it's just going to be too hard for them. This is grade 3. And they get all excited, but then they get that look in their eyes, and it's really difficult for them. So if you give them that opportunity to try to discover it, but you don't want them to be overwhelmed and shut down. So that is what I thought would be the smartest way to go about it. So they're assigned to their division sections, or now in the jury. They work in groups of 2 to 3, and they're going to survey classes in the school to complete it. Student pairs will be assigned depending on the class size, total number of students, and I've said this already. So before they collect the data and complete their school-wide survey, we're going to have a class discussion to move the thinking towards, and again, I just getting ahead of myself talking about logistics. But one of the things we talk about here is what do you predict is going to be the most preferred activities. How will you collect the data? How will you know how many students? What are you going to do if they're absent? What if the favorite activities you choose don't appeal to the people in that division? So we're going to write out and post our predictions in student thinking on the word wall, math wall, provide them with survey questions in a handout format if they want, or allow them to create their own and arrange and assign them, and off they go. So here we are at our after consolidation, finally. So when they've all finished, we're going to make photocopies of the data so everyone can analyze it, and especially the combined division. And that's what I thought would be the easiest. So we're going to review where necessary the important concepts, because now we really want to be able to do this well, because we're going to present it to the school and to the principal. So we're going to tell the class that each division will work in groups of 2 and will now complete a division school graph. So we're going to have groups of students working on 3 divisions in the school, because I thought that would be the most manageable. Again, they're grade 3 students, and slowly from class to designing something for division to going out and surveying, coming back, and now taking, because you're going to have JK, SK, 1 and 2. You're going to have those 3 groups of people now going to come together and going to have to create this division graph. So we'll end up with 3 graphs, 1 for each division. And they have to choose, they have to decide, so there's a lot of collaboration going on there, which is really, really good. So when the students have finished, we're going to present them to class for another gallery walk again, really trying to get them to assess and look at the data, again, giving understanding, again, reaffirming how do we represent this data, how do we communicate it, make sure we're doing it correctly, and just see how people were collecting the data, how they represented it. So again, student responses, some of them had trouble keeping track of their Cali counts. They were surprised by how many students there were in total, 75 perhaps per division, maybe 82, maybe more. Some of them didn't have the correct scale. They may not be able to make comparisons. Misconception, they might have thought they only had to do their own instead of their division. They might have thought, well, if I make a mistake, it's not good anymore. Students may think that they don't have to include 0. They might not realize that you can let your data tell you what the scale is. If you notice some of the ones I've done before, as you can see in this one, the K-2 division. So when you're going to do, I'm sort of ahead of the band show here, but you're going to collect 2 or 3 selected pieces and you're going to bring them forward. And so I've got front loading the examples. So here's an example very similar to before, and I forgot to mention that these are the handouts I've given. They could use something different. And so they've done this already. Again, this is where you see their explanation of what they're seeing in this graph. And that is the difference in a level 4. So it just happens to be K-2 for this one. I picked a level 3 from grade 3 to 5. And again, the one over there I think was 2s. This is 5s. Great, nothing wrong with it. Again, there was an error in this one. I think this one was, Uno was 4. No, it wasn't Uno. It's one of them. It's one of these. Oh, there it is, Uno. It is Uno. There it is, Uno's here. And so Uno was 4 and they've graphed it as 5. So there's an example of a typical grade 3 versus 4 in EQAO. Sometimes it might be a minor mistake, and in terms of this. Another example of a level 3, the student did scale of 4. So we've had 2, 4, and 5. It's not the scale, it's just they need to do it correctly. But this one here, you know, it seems a little more similar. They've looked at their data and say, okay, the longest one I have is 15, so it doesn't have to go up too high. And again, it's in their relationship here. The graph shows me chess is the most popular. This is the least favorite, least popular, and there we go. So the guiding questions when they come back is, how does the total data reflect our predictions? What are some of the difficulties you encountered? Can you describe 1 or 2 things that the division surveys are telling us? Does the data collected look any different in some of those bar pictographs, and why? Does the scale make any difference in how it's represented? How as a class will we choose the best way to represent our findings? And this is when they really can come together as a class to decide how are we going to represent this? We've done it. We've looked at all these things. We've done a gallery. Now we're coming together. How are we going to represent it? And there's no right or wrong in this. They're going to choose 1 or 2 graphs from each division, perhaps. You know, create a poster that way. Are we going to have 1? Are they going to combine them? So that will really be a class decision. So they're going to decide, and we might have student volunteers to complete new graphs or use the existing ones to prepare it. And I thought it'd be really nice if we celebrated their accomplishments with a class photo and go from there. So their exit ticket is to give students a choice. They can right now go ahead and independently graph another division of the survey. So maybe they're in the primary and they want to do the 6 to 8, then they can go do that. Or the next one is that they could decide that they want to take that data from those 3 graphs, because they'll have tally counts from those, correct? And they can take those and decide to make a whole graph for the whole school. I didn't want to put that piece in the consolidation because I thought it might overwhelm them at first. So now here's an opportunity for them to do it. But for some students who have fatigue, maybe again the needs of our learners, maybe something like this will be fine. This is too much. And then I have a choice of something simpler. It's just it'll be a student sheet. There'll already be a graph and they have to interpret it and do some comparisons. So assessment for, as, and of learning, we've included that in what we're talking. You have a checklist, you have those conversations, the student peer conferencing as we were going around those gallery walks, and you're doing those guided questions, student questions and their responses to you, the self-assessment and group assessment. You know, I didn't kind of integrate as much as I would have liked to in my presentation here, but that's going on throughout it, and that's really an important piece. That's important for the as learning, for the metacognition, but also for the learning as well. I can be seeing those as they're doing this. So their reflection, the student teacher feedback, peer feedback, should have included that. Written explanations in the math journals and the work afterwards, and of learning, teacher-student conference, samples of student work exit ticket, and really should be in there is all that good observations that you have when you're conferencing with the students, when you're doing those gallery walks. That's all important. We know we have all of this in our head all the time as teachers, but we can go and include that when we're looking at their student work, because sometimes they forget to put down on paper, especially grade 3. But if you have those good, rich conversations with them when you're both doing, when you're circulating around the room, when you're doing those gallery walks, when you're having discussions, you can be adding that so you get that composite picture. Next steps. So there's going to be students who still have difficulty, hopefully not, after EQAO, but they will be. Give them extra practice. The ORB has a great data management probability site going Graphing Greatness and online, and they can be doing that. You can also conference with them and choose selected graphing questions to try to find out where it is. Is it the scale? Is it the numbers? And if it is, they can be using calculators. And I forgot to mention that can be available anytime they need them. Where students are struggling how to complete it, you can give them an opportunity to write their family at home, favorite TV, video, music choices, etc. Students are having difficulty with numbers, give them a calculator. Those who need enrichment, provide them with an opportunity to create a simple survey. Important issue in the community. I know in our school, ticks was a big deal, and we have this huge playground, and it was just getting worse all the time. So be a good survey for that one. Extension, combine them all. That's also. Extending the learning, ask them to brainstorm issues in the community, ask students to create a simple survey to collect data for these issues. How can we reduce class and school garbage? That's a great eco-school initiative. Provide opportunities to view authentic data on graphs and compare them. For example, even the board and school EQAO data results from the previous year are great things. It makes it real for them, and they understand that data is information that we need to analyze, process, and try to make sense of. And so we have to put them in some sort of graphic form so that we can help communicate those results to people. So that's it for now. Hope I didn't go through too fast. Thank you very much for listening, and on to the next presenter.